Before we get started with the video today, guys, I want to let you viewers out there know that only a small fraction of you guys currently watching are actually subscribed to my channel, so make sure to smash that subscribe button for instant updates about videos that I release and other announcements, and also smash that like button to help my channel out. Enjoy the video. What is up, guys? It is Samool here, back with another Epic 7 video for you guys today. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 RGB 4-star units for Epic 7 for both PvP and PvE combined. Now, I know that 4-star units in Epic 7, especially RGB ones, are very overlooked and people think of them as not that useful, because you're kind of right? There's actually not very many 4-star units in this game that are useful, and they're one of the most disregarded units in the game. Even Smilegate doesn't really buff or nerf too many of them. They only focus on 3-star units because they're free to play and accessible to everyone, and 5-star units because they're for more mid-game, late-game players, and they're the highest star grade in the game, 5 stars. So you have to make sure that they're actually usable, right? 4-star units are like that middle child in the family where they don't get the best of anything. So it is pretty rough for the 4-star units, but I think there are some diamonds in the rough, and you guys might be surprised at some of the units on this list and the honorable mentions, but I think these units actually have some use and are actually pretty decent, but people just don't use them that much. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions as always, guys, and let's get into this list. So first, for our honorable mentions, I think this comes to no surprise to anyone, but we have the god of Wyvern himself, Furious. Now, Furious is only ever used in Wyvern. I think that's like the only area of content he's used in, but I have to put him in this honorable mention list for top 5 RGB 4 stars because he's just so damn good at Wyvern, guys. Like, you take him into pretty much every single team comp that runs Wyvern because, one, he's free to play from connections. You could get him, even though he's a 4-star, everyone is able to get him without even summoning him. And 2, he fits the defense break role and is far better than his second in line, which would be Terranor Guard. Now, Terranor Guard was always really good in the past, but since Furious came out, he's just so OP in Wyvern that you cannot run team comps without him unless you're, of course, one-shotting the Wyvern. Now, to go over his skills, Furious has his S3, which at max Mola, it is a 3-turn, 100% chance to decrease defense. If you have enough effectiveness, the only chance that it gets resisted will be if it gets 15%ed by the Wyvern. So very, very powerful defense break. You just have to pray you don't get 15%ed basically, and you will have perma defense break on the boss. Next, you have his S2, which is going to be a crit chance buff. That is a 50% crit chance buff, and also will give him an extra turn, and the cooldown is 3 turns. Now, when you get the extra turn, it actually pushes it to 2-turn cooldown, right? Because you used it. So that means the crit chance buff, if Furious is the fastest on your team, the crit chance buff will be up on your team permanently as long as Furious gets his turn off. That means the entire gear requirement of your team is lowered by 50% crit. That is insane, and it is invaluable to Wyvern for new players because it makes gearing for Wyvern so much easier, because trying to get to 100% crit or 85% crit, I guess, for Wyvern on your ice units is going to be a pain, and Furious just makes it so you only need 35%, so you don't really need to invest any gear into crit chance at all. So it's really, really nice. And the extra turn is very nice because it resets your S3 cooldown, because you'll see that the S3 is 3 turns, like I said, right, when you mull it, and the defense break is 2 turns long. Well, if you S2 and then S3, the S3 cooldown will actually only be 2 turns technically. So you have perma defense break as well. So Furious is just suited very well for PvE, especially for single target fights. So why not bring him into Wyvern, where you could lower your gear requirements and where, you're just really, really powerful because you have the defense break. And then your S1 also has a pretty decent chance to burn. It's going to be, I think, 35% at max Mola, but you don't have to Mola it. But the best part about this is that it is a 2-turn debuff, so if it lands, and it'll stick for 2 turns, pretty much half of Wyvern's turn cycle before you barrier phases. So it is very, very nice if it lands. And if you run him on Song of Stars, his best artifact, you have 3 debuffs. So Furious can basically solo debuff for you, with the target debuff, the defense break, and then the burn occasionally landing as well. So very, very powerful Wyvern unit. The only reason he's not in the top 5 though is because he is pretty one-dimensional. You don't use him anywhere but Wyvern, but he is so good at Wyvern, guys, that I cannot keep him off the honorable mentions list. Another honorable mention we have today is going to be Clarissa. So Clarissa is also pretty similar to Furious in that she is pretty damn good in Wyvern, and she's pretty much only used there. I guess you could use her as a Dogwalker as well, and like an AoE DPS and some bosses that, need AoE DPS, and she can be used as a defense breaker. But besides that, she's primarily going to be used in Wyvern. So Clarissa is really good because she also has a exclusive equipment that will make her have 2 bleeds on her S1, but I'll go over that in a second. So her S3 has 2 bleeding effects, has a decreased defense, so you already have 3 debuffs in your S3, and then your S3 will also be an AoE attack, so you can use this on the first wave of Wyvern and one-shot. So Clarissa is very, very valuable in Wyvern one-shot teams because she can one-shot the first wave pretty easily with her S3, and then what happens after is that her S2 will proc when something dies by her S3, which will happen because some of the ads are lower HP than the big mage ad and the first wave, so your S2 will proc and finish it off. So very, very nice with the AoE for first wave of Wyvern. You also, if you just put in a regular Wyvern comp, her S3 has 3 debuffs, so it's very, very powerful. And then her S1 also is another defense break with another 2 added bleeding effects from her exclusive equipment. So it makes her a very, very strong debuffer for Wyvern. She actually does very decent damage as well. And she has a defense break that's on a 50% chance. But the thing is, like, you don't bring her as your main defense break. You'll pair her with like Furious, for example, and she's there in case Wyvern gets 15% resist and resist Furious's defense break. So she can be your backup defense breaker while supplying a lot of debuffs and doing decent damage. So she's basically kind of like Cigarette in that she has a lot of debuffs. She just does less damage, but she does have a defense break. So she's a very, very powerful unit for Wyvern. For newer players, she's very, very strong, especially even for mid late game players. She is one of the best wave 1 one-shotters Wyvern 13, the other being SSB, so very, very powerful. I cannot keep her off my honorable mentions list either. And the next honorable mention is going to be Kizuna AI. She is a mini collab unit that came out about a year ago. We don't know if she's going to be rerun or not, but if you have her, she's actually not that bad. Her S3 is going to be an attack buff for 3 turns and a barrier, so the attack buff for 3 turns is really nice because she can kind of do what Tamron does, but you'll notice that she does it a lot worse. Not a lot worse, a little worse, but still really nice because attack buff will last for 3 turns, which is a long time. And 3 turns is the magic number for an attack buff for Banshee one-shot teams. So you'll need her in a Banshee one-shot team if you don't have another attack buffer like Vivian, Diane, Maid Chloe, or like Mui, right? So you can use her instead. She also has an increased speed buff to herself, which is good for cycling turns to get her S3 back up because her S3 is very powerful. Attack buff on Soul Eaters that can heal and cleanse are very strong, and you'll see in her S2, she can heal at the end of the turn, so her healing isn't that bad, especially if you Mola her, but it's hard to say if she's worth the Mola, but even without Mola, it's okay healing. As long as you build her fast, she can heal a decent amount, although it is single target. Her S1 is going to be a Dispel, kind of like Ray, and if you Soul Burn it, it'll Dispel everyone instead of just one target. So yeah, she has healing, she has dispelling, attack buff, barrier, and she can cycle fast with speed. So she's not bad, right? Just her kit itself by design, it can't really be bad. You just need to build her quick and kind of pair with another healer that can cleanse. So if you don't have Tamron, you can actually use her with a Momo, and they actually pair very well together if you have Kizuna AI. Until you get Tamron, of course, you're going to want to replace her with Tamron, but as a budget Tamron option, because Tamron's banner isn't run too often, to be honest, Kizuna AI, if you have her, if she comes out again soon, as of this video, you might want to use her, build her if you don't have Tamron, and if the Tamron banner is no in sight, because she does have an attack buff, and she's a very good support healing cleanser. So very, very strong in my opinion. Not very, very strong, very, very underrated. I think she's actually decent, and it's sad that people haven't really used her too much. I think when she first came out, people just thought she was trash, but I think she's okay. I kind of used her a bit as well, so a little bit biased. And the last honorable mention today, guys, is going to be Armin, the Earth Knight. So Armin, she's pretty good at mitigating damage. Her S3 is going to be a barrier to her entire team. Also will heal, so it's kind of like a weird skill, usually what Soul Eaters would have, but she has it as a Knight, so she can carry Aureus and mitigate more damage. And then she'll also heal them proportional to her own max HP, so usually Knights you will build really tanky, so you'll actually heal a lot. Now, when her S3 is unavailable and on cooldown, though, you'll see that you actually have like a mini adamant shield effect where your allies take 10% less damage. So very, very nice, and the cooldown's really low too, 4-turn cooldown, and if you soul burn it, it'll be a 2-turn cooldown. So she is actually super strong at mitigating damage, and in PvP I've run into her like very few times, but the times I did, I was actually very surprised. Like even on defense teams, she heals a lot, and she's super annoying with her mitigation. So I think she's very, very powerful just from her S3 alone. And to top it off, her S2 has a 100% chance to inflict decreased hit chance. So you guys already know how annoying that decreased hit chance is. Like when RB reses and S3s, doesn't kill your DPS but blinds them, it's basically like killing them, right? Because you are going to do no damage and you can't kill RB that turn cycle. Really, really annoying debuff. And the cooldown's only 3 turns, so you'll notice her cooldowns are really low. So she can just spam her skills and just be super annoying with her mitigation and their decreased hit chance, which is basically more mitigation. Also inflict poison, which isn't too big of a deal. Poison's pretty weak in PvP. In PvE it does have some usage, so maybe in Abyss you can use her as another poison debuffer with like Clarissa and Dizzy if you're running that comp. And also will increase her defense, which makes her even more tankier. She's already pretty tanky by herself, but with all of her mitigation and that defense buff, the defense buff will increase her barrier strength as well because it scales with her defense. So yeah, her kit works very well together at mitigating and, you know, just being super annoying and a big nuisance. And then to make it even worse, her S1 has a chance to stun, and when you're actually debuffed, the chance will increase, right? I don't even know how much the chance increases. I know there's a number for people. People have to let me know what it is. It doesn't say on the skill right now, but yeah, it's super annoying, guys. 35% chance to emo it, and then if you have the debuff on the enemy, the chance increases. So yeah, it's just a really annoying to deal with, a really annoying unit to deal with in PvP. And in PvE, she's actually pretty decent. As a knight, she can be like your frontline general usage knight, and you'll be able to, you know, just take so much less damage. She can actually like heal for you as well. So very annoying. I think she's very underrated. People need to start using her more. I think she's like actually pretty strong. So yeah, that's gonna end it for my honorable mentions list, guys. And now we'll go into the real list now. So at the number 5 list, we have Schuri, the Fire Ranger. Schuri is pretty good in PvP and like cleaving. In PvE, he's good in like CR manipulation comps. Also good as just like a, you know, normal DPS, but very, very strong in CR manipulation, and you'll see why. So his S3 is an AoE attack, and when he has 3 or more focus, what will happen is that the S3 will also, crit no matter what, and decrease CR, and you can soul burn it for an extra turn. So going over his S2, you'll see that whenever he crits, he gets 1 focus, and then he CR pushes his ally, so he has a CR push back on the enemy and a CR push up. So you can see why I said he's very good at manipulating CR. The crit doesn't really matter because you should always be critting anyways if you have him on good gear. So he just will push back CR and push his team up over and over. And if you have other units that synergize well with him, that also can deal with CR pretty well, like Lidica, or, you know, even some other units, like, it's just really, really strong in PvE because you don't have to actually do the fight with at all. Well, you can just like push their CR back and push your team up over and over, and you'll get like 10 turns before the boss or the enemy gets 1. So very, very strong in PvE because of those 2 skills. And his S1 is a poison, which you guys already know is very strong in PvE because it scales max HP, and bosses have really high max HP, so they'll take so much damage, and you can even extend it with other units and whatnot. So yeah, very, very powerful PvE. He also has a speed imprint, making his units even faster that are around him, which means that he can manipulate CR even better in PvE. Now PvP, he's a very good offensive cleaver, 1 because of his speed imprint, and 2 because he can push back CR and push up his team with CR. And also he actually does decent damage. Actually, it's pretty underrated, so he's actually a very, very good offensive cleaver. In RTA, people will try to draft him if they're trying to speed contest and cleave, and the other player tries to speed contest and counter the cleave with speed, and it becomes a speed war. And Shuri's really good in those situations, so very, very strong unit in my opinion for PvE and PvP, and that is why he's at the number 5 spot. And at number 4, guys, we have not the current Mercedes, guys. Disclaimer, it is not the Mercedes out now, but I'm talking about the Mercedes that is getting buffed on September 2nd as Smilegate released in their patch notes, okay? The Mercedes, as of now, the videos released before the buffs, is actually not even honorable mention worthy, in my opinion, but I think after the buffs, she will be top 5 for sure, and let me tell you why. So, Mercedes is going to have a change on her S1, where it will give her a CR push. It'll also change her S2 in that it has a chance to strip, and when she has attack buff, when you attack, it can proc again. Now, I think this will only be for her S1. It might work for her S3 as well. And if it does work on her S3 as well, it'll make it even more powerful. And now her S3 is also getting changed where that, instead of like being an execute, where it will do more damage when the target's lower, it will actually do more damage if it crits, which probably means it'll do more damage in most situations. And also it buffs everyone's attack instead of just herself, so she is an attack buffer. Now, why do I think she's so strong now after these buffs? Well, it's mostly because, one, usually DPS units that are good in PvE, which I think she'll be primarily used in, need like something a little bit more of an oomph on their S1 than just like a standard attack. For instance, Rina, Landy, Luna, right? So what do they have on their S1? Not only is it just an attack, but Landy, for example, has a CR push and stacking attack. Rina has stacking attack. Luna has a CR push as well, and she has her S2 passive, making her S1s do more damage, and it resets the cooldown of her S3. So that is why with these buffs, I think Mercedes will be a very viable threat in PvE, because her S1 has that CR push to keep the attack buff up on her team, and she has just so much AoE damage in all of her skills, and she has no debuffs, so against bosses that have a debuff cap, you can bring her freely. So that's a lot of bosses in Abyss where you can use her for, you know, basically general purpose, because a lot of bosses in Abyss have debuff caps, and Hell Raid as well. Against Hell Queen you can use her. And to make it even better, the strip on her S2 makes her so good, because you can strip defense buffs, you can strip attack buffs, right? In A13 you can strip Berserk, which is going to one-shot your team if you don't have a strip for it. In Hell Queen you can strip the greater attack buff, greater defense buff as like a semi-stripper, like as a backup stripper, because she can only strip one buff, albeit it is only one buff, so still very good though, because the chance is pretty high. And if it procs every attack when she has attack buff, she can strip like every single turn because it's AoE strip, right? So yeah, I think she's very, very strong after the buffs, guys. She's going to be very good in PvE, and like A13 for sure, Hell Raid for sure, Abyss for sure, Earth Expedition as well for sure. In PvP, it's hard to say. Some people might test her out, maybe even like a tanky like counter set build, right? Because you have the CR push in your S1, if you counter and you can strip a lot too, kind of like how Arc Demon Shadow works right now, but we'll have to see. But definitely, like, even just looking at her PvE aspect, I know she will be top 5, because she is a really easy to get free to play option. All the memory imprints can be given to you for free, and she'll just be very, very powerful for a lot of the PvE content, in my opinion. I'm really excited for these changes, guys, and I hope you guys are too. Yeah, and that's why I think Mercedes is number 4. And third on the list, we have Green Cidd. So Green Cidd is very good in PvE as a general purpose single target DPS. You can slot him in for like Sivarina, or even like Luna, or, you know, Landy. And he's also good in PvP as a speed opener / counter opener. He can one shot like 2 units on the field. He's very, very powerful. You can even protect him, and he just cycles really fast because he gets speed buff, and he just does a lot of damage. It's actually, the damage is actually crazy that he does. It's very underrated. But let's look at his skills real quick, guys. So S3 is going to be just a single target attack. When you soul burn it, it'll one-shot squishies, guys, if you have gear on him. Also will give you an extra turn when you kill an enemy. And then you attack with advantageous element when you are granted speed buff, and it scales with speed. So you can build him with speed, and he won't lose too much damage because his damage does scale with it, although you want to focus on the damage portion still. Now his S2 is going to be when you crit, you have a speed buff for yourself, and you'll have a chance, which is maxed at max mola, so you'll be a 100% chance to get a random buff for 1 turn. And the buffs you can see are crit damage, effectiveness, evasion, and immunity. So evasion and crit damage will be the best for the most cases, so 50% chance to get the best buffs, so very, very nice. And then his S1, which you'll be able to use after you kill a unit with your S3, is going to be another single target attack. But when you're granted increased speed, which you'll get from using your S3 and critting, you actually use a different skill instead of just a regular single target attack. You attack with a stronger skill that scales with your speed, and also decreases defense. You can basically one-shot another squishy with this. So yeah, very, very powerful unit. His damage is actually crazy, and yeah, in PvE you can use him as like a defense break single target, and slot him in anywhere really, and then he'll do the job just well. He's very, very strong and does high damage. His imprint is also very, very strong as well. For the imprint release, it's a speed buff to everyone besides himself. So very good speed imprint, and then if you decide to concentrate him, actually it's a crit chance buff, which is like the second best imprint in the game. So he has 2 of the best imprints in the game, one being the speed imprint, one being crit chance, because crit chance is harder to build. So yeah, very, very powerful unit. That's why he's top 3. PvE is a beast, PvP is a beast. If you guys have him and you're looking to, you know, speed contest in PvP, build him. If you need a single target threat in PvE, build him. You won't regret it, guys. This guy is so fun to use as well, so this is why he's at the number 3 spot. And number 2 on the list, we have the Ice Knight Rose. Rose is very good in PvE and Fire Expedition, very good as a general purpose tank because she does have an attack buff built in. She also has CR push for her team, so she is very decent as like a general purpose tank. You can just slot her in if you just need the attack buff and a meat shield, anywhere basically in Abyss and Raid. To be honest, you can just slot her in, she's very good. But the main reason she's at number 2, guys, is because of her PvP usage. So in PvP, she's very, very good in offensive cleave. A lot of people actually use her as their first attack buffer for offensive cleave because she is a 4-star and pretty easy to obtain. And her attack buff and her S3, not only does it give attack buff, but it will give you CR to your team too. It gives about 25%, which is a huge amount. So very, very strong as an attack buff for CR pusher in PvP. The only thing is her speed is a little bit slow, but they kind of mitigated that with her exclusive equipment that actually gives her speed now. So yeah, very good in PvP offense, arena cleaves. You can also actually use her in general purpose teams in PvP because she is a knight. She has a lot of mitigation because she can hold Aureus. She has a CR push with attack buff, and she's very tanky with her increased defense buff. So she can actually get like 3 like S3s off, especially in like RTA if you draft her, and you build her like somewhat speedy, if you use her that way. So she can get like multiple S3s off in her S2s, which also is a cleanse and gets barrier. So she can cleanse as well, CR push, and like, you know, have a lot of utility with her barrier as well. So very, very powerful. So you guys saw a glimpse of her skills. Let's go over it again. So her S3 is a CR push attack buff, which will also give her defense. Now if you soul burn it, which is very cheap, the attack buff is actually 3 turns, and the defense buff is also 3 turns. So sometimes it's worth using it because the cooldown is only 4 turns. So you can have like perma attack buff or defense buff up, basically, if you have her pretty fast. Now her S2 is going to be, like I said, a 2 debuff dispel for 1 target and a barrier, and then CR push. And it scales with your defense, and Rose's defense is really high, and you also get increased defense from S3. So you actually give like pretty fat shields to your DPS or whoever you're cleansing, right? So very, very nice, a lot of utility. And then to top it all off, her S1 is going to have a chance to provoke. It goes up to 75% chance, which is pretty decent. Same as crowd to provoke for 1 turn, but it only works when your health is above 50%. But when you are lower than 50%, it actually gives you defense. So a defense buff for 1 turn. So yeah, you can see she has a lot of utility. Her damage on her S1 is actually not bad. Like when she has attack buff on and defense buff on, she actually does like pretty decent damage with her S1 because it scales with defense. So not anything to, you know, mess around with. She's very, very powerful in PvP, and she is the best tank in Fire Expedition and has really good usage as a general purpose tank in PvE as well. So that is why she's at the number 2 spot, and honestly she could probably even be at the number 1 spot. And last but not least, at number 1 we have Fire Soul Weaver Achates. So Achates is very powerful in PvE as a general purpose healer and cleanser. She has a lot of AoE healing and a lot of AoE cleansing, and she also is very nice because she has an invincibility buff she can put on 1 target, which makes it so you can cheese some very hard-hitting single target skills from bosses like Dark Corvus in Abyss Floor 85. And she also has attack down on S1, which is nice against bosses because bosses usually can't resist attack down, so the attack down will just make them do less damage. So very good at healing and keeping her team alive. A lot of cleanse support, invincibility support, so that just makes her a very powerful general purpose Soul Weaver for PvE. You can even take her in place of Tamarin in Earth Expedition. She's very good in some Abyss Floors, very good in Raid. She's very general purpose. There's not really an area she's very good in. She's just strong in like everything because she just has so much raw healing. And in PvP, very good in offense teams, especially Guild Wars, because of her invincibility, and she just has so much healing, like I said, and cleansing. Very good in like slow teams with like Dark Corvus or Crow if you pair with them, very strong. Very good with like protect the DPS comps as well. So just a very powerful option, even in RTA as well. On defense, you don't see her too much, but some people run her on Candlestick and then, you know, make her super tanky, and she just never dies and just keeps healing and stalls until the opponent has to yield. So it's a very, very powerful option for there as well if you run her on Candlestick. So yeah, not to be slept on. She's very, very strong and number 1 for a reason. So let's look at her skills. So her S3 is going to be an AoE cleanse. It dispels all debuffs and also heals. Only a 3-turn cooldown, by the way. And the Soul Burn increases the heal by a lot. Another thing is when you get the exclusive equipment that's most ran on her, when you use your S3, you increase your effect resist on yourself as well. So you actually makes it so, you know, you can't get CC'd at all and you turn cycle without being able to get interrupted. Her S2 is going to be a single target heal that grants invincibility and will decrease your skill cooldowns by 1 turn. So very, very strong for turn cycling. It also heals a lot as well, like a lot. So very underrated skill, and the cooldown is very low as well, only 3 turns. And our S1, like I said, it is a decreased attack down, very good for neutering units to make them do less damage, especially DPS. It's just very, very powerful effect on our S1 as a Soul Weaver because yeah, like A Momo has like a sleep, which is very like situational because you can awake them, right? But yeah, decreased attack is always nice because 1 is also 2 turns as well, so you neuter them for 2 turns if they don't get cleansed, and also because attack down just basically shuts down any offense at the moment. So yeah, very, very powerful unit. This is why she's number 1 in my opinion. You can just take her anywhere. She's very, very general usage. You can take her basically anywhere, and she's very strong always. She's never weak anywhere, so that's why I think Achates is number 1. And yeah, that pretty much summarizes for my top 5 4-star RGB units for both PvP and PvE. I really hope you liked this video, guys, and keep in mind, guys, it's my personal opinion. If you guys disagree, let me know down in the comments below, and I will gladly read your comments and, you know, discuss with you or take into account your ideas and comments into my next video. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you guys next video. Peace.